Hello friends, welcome to the HFY Ode, where we bring you new science fiction stories, a new world, a new adventure. And yes, there is no robotic or AI voices here, only real human voices with real human touch. So let's start this journey, and please subscribe my channel if you like the stories and press the bell icon for the latest updates. Let's have a story. Okay.
They said space doesn't care about your prayers. Turns out, sometimes it sends an answer anyway, just not the kind you'd expect. The Valith didn't believe in coincidence. Every trajectory was calculated, every probability mapped. When the distress beacon flickered into existence at the edge of the Ashmar expanse, the High Navigators ran their algorithms 17 times before accepting what the numbers told them. Impossible survival. 0.03% chance of life. Statistical noise. Commander Thale9 stood before the projection sphere, mandibles clicking in what his human liaison would have called frustration. The glowing red marker pulsed in the darkness between stars. A human vessel, Registry Persephone's Dream, adrift for 6 rotation cycles in a region where space itself seemed to fray at the edges. We should file the loss report, his second said. Protocol demands protocol. Thale9 tasted the word. The humans have a saying about protocol and compassion. Humans have sayings about everything. Seconds, thermal pits flared. Most of them contradictory. True enough. Thale9 had served alongside humans for 3 stellar years now. Ever since the Treaty of Combined Waters brought their chaotic species into the Galactic Collective. They were strange, inefficient. Their ships held together with what they called ingenuity and what every other species recognized as systematic structural violations. The Persephone's Dream was a survey vessel. Small crew. 4 souls according to the manifest. Dr. Keiko Yamada, exobiologist. Naveen Kaur, pilot. James Chun, systems engineer. And the child. Second's voice softened, which for a Valith meant the subsonic rumble dropped half an octave. There was a youngling aboard. Thale9's crest plates shifted. Mira Yamada, 8 cycles old. They stood in silence. The projection sphere showed nothing but the cold mathematics of death. Oxygen depletion. Hull breach probability rising exponentially with each passing hour. The Ashmar expanse was named for the Ashmar convergence, a spatial anomaly that had swallowed 17 expeditions before the collective declared it off limits. Adjust course, Thale9 said. Commander, I said adjust course. Second knew better than to argue when Thale9 used that tone. Besides, she'd been thinking the same thing. Humans were reckless and loud and somehow always surprised when their improvised solutions failed spectacularly. But they were people, treatykin, and something about the thought of a youngling drifting alone in the dark made Second's thermal regulation fail, just slightly. The luminous Endeavor banked hard, drives singing as they carved a new vector through the void. The crew went to ready stations without being told. Everyone had seen the beacon. Everyone had done the math. Everyone knew this was a recovery mission, not a rescue. The first sign that something was wrong, or right, depending on perspective, came 16 hours into their burn. Commander, the sensor operator's voice carried an edge. I'm reading, that can't be accurate. Thale9 moved to the console. Numbers cascaded across the display. He read them once, twice, checked the calibration. Life signs, he said carefully. 1. The operator's manipulator appendages trembled. Faint but stable. Human biorhythm. Juvenile. The bridge went silent except for the ambient hum of the drives. Wow, Second said. It wasn't really a question. Nobody had an answer. The Persephone's Dream materialized on visual scopes 3 hours later. The hull was scored black, meteor impacts pocking the superstructure like disease. The main habitat ring had separated, visible debris trailing in a lazy spiral. Portside solar array just gone, sheared clean. Life support should have failed on day 2. Magnify, Thale9 ordered. The image sharpened. There, against all reason, a single section of the ship showed power. Emergency lighting flickered in one small chamber. The medical bay, according to schematics. And inside, I have visual confirmation, the sensor operator said softly. One human child. Alive. Fail 9 felt something unfamiliar coil in his thorax. His species didn't experience what humans called hope. They dealt in probabilities. But watching that small shape move behind the viewport, wrapped in what looked like every blanket the ship possessed, he understood why humans clung to such an irrational emotion. Prepare boarding, he said. Full medical team. And he paused. And someone find me everything we have on human juvenile care protocols. Second's mandibles curved, the Valith equivalent of smile. Already done, Commander. The boarding tube sealed with a pneumatic hiss. Fail 9 led the team himself, which violated approximately 9 safety regulations. He didn't care. Something about this situation demanded presence. The Persephone's dream was a tomb. Emergency lighting cast everything in red. The corridor walls showed frost patterns where atmosphere had bled into vacuum and frozen. Fail 9's environmental suit registered temperatures that would have killed most species in minutes. But the medical bay door ahead showed green status. Sealed. Pressurized. Life signs, he sub-vocalized into the comm, still stable. Commander, she's built something. Fail 9 didn't understand until they breached the door. The medical bay had been transformed. Every emergency thermal unit had been stacked, overlapped, jury-rigged into a cocoon of warmth around the examination table. Oxygen scrubbers, designed for one person for one day, had been networked together in a configuration that should have caused feedback failure, but instead somehow worked. Water condensers fed into recycled fluid bags. And at the center of this improvised life support system, a child. She sat cross-legged on the examination table, surrounded by what looked like every storage container in the ship. Her dark hair stuck up at odd angles. Her face was smudged with something that might have been sealant paste. She wore an adult environment suit that had been cut and refastened to approximately fit her small frame. When she saw them, she didn't scream, didn't cry, just looked up with eyes that had seen too much for 8 cycles. Hi, she said. Her voice was hoarse. Are you the rescue people? Fail 9 felt his translation implant struggle with a casual informality. We are, he managed. Are you injured? My arm hurts. She held it up. A crude splint held her left forearm straight. I think it's broken. I fixed it though, like in the manual. Second, moved forward with a medical scanner. The readings made her thermal pits flare in distress. Broken radius, dehydration, mild hypothermia, radiation exposure just below critical threshold, but alive, functional, talking. What's your name? Fail 9 asked, trying to gentle his subsonic harmonics. Mira. She watched them with an unnerving steadiness. Mira Yamada. Can you help my mom? The question landed like a weapon. Your mother? Fail 9 said carefully. She's in the captain's quarters. She told me to wait here. She said someone would come. Myra's voice didn't waver. She said I was smart enough to figure it out until they did. Second exchanged a look with Fail 9. The captain's quarters registered 0 atmosphere. 0 power. 0 chance. Mira, Fail 9 said, and hated how his voice had to deliver this truth. I need you to understand, she's dead. Mira said it flatly. Factually. I know. The hull breach was on day 3. She went to seal it manually. The door locked behind her. A pause. The others died on day 1. Reactor leak. Mom got me to medical before. Her voice finally cracked. Just slightly. Before. The silence that followed hurt. 6 days, Second whispered. She survived alone for 6 days. Fail 9 knelt. An awkward motion for a Valith. Mira, how did you manage the life support? The thermal regulation? The oxygen recycling? For the first time, something like a smile touched Myra's face. It looked wrong on someone so young discussing survival mathematics. Mom taught me, she said. We used to play a game. What would you do if? What would you do if the air filters failed? What would you do if the water recycler broke? She said humans who go to space have to think 3 steps ahead of disaster. Mira gestured at her improvised nest. So I did. Fail 9 looked at the jury-rigged life support, at the child who had built it, at the impossible fact of her survival. Your mother, he said slowly, was very wise. She was the best. Myra's eyes glistened. Can I bring her with us? I know but I can't leave her here. I can't. Second made a sound that the translator couldn't parse. Grief, maybe. Or respect. We'll bring everyone home, Fail 9 promised. I give you my word. The trip back to Way Station Carthage took 4 days. Mira spent most of it in the medical bay, though the doctors couldn't do much except treat her physical injuries and watch in professional bewilderment as she demonstrated a psychological resilience that their training said shouldn't exist. She didn't cry, didn't rage, just sat quietly, eating the nutrient supplements they provided and asking questions about Vela physiology that made the medical staff uncomfortable with their precision. She should be traumatized, the head physician told Fail 9 privately. 6 days alone with dead crewmates. A dying ship. Broken arm. No food after day 4. By every psychological metric we have, she should be catatonic. But she's not, Fail 9 said. No. The physician's thermal pits flickered. She's processing the experience like a scientist documenting an experiment. She told me she kept a log, recorded everything, so future missions would know what worked. Fail 9 felt that unfamiliar sensation again. The one humans called hope, but which he was beginning to recognize as something else. Awe. On the 3rd day, Second found Mira in the observation lounge. The child sat with her legs pulled to her chest, watching the stars slide past. May I join you? Second asked. Mira shrugged, which Second's cultural database suggested was permission. They sat in silence for a while. Then, Mira said, Do Valeth believe in anything? Like after? Second considered the question. We believe in patterns. That energy transforms but doesn't disappear. That the heat we generate in life continues to warm the universe in small ways. That's nice. Myra's voice was small. Mom used to say we're all made of dead stars. That nothing is ever really gone, just changed. Your mother sounds like she understood thermodynamics. I got a small laugh. She understood everything. Second's thermal regulation wobbled again. You know what you did, the survival engineering. The collective has specialists who trained for years to do what you managed in 6 days. I just did what made sense. That's the part that's remarkable, Second said gently. Most species panic. They make emotional decisions. They freeze. Mira was quiet for a moment. Then, she said, Mom always told me, fear is just information. Use it. She touched the observation window, fingers leaving small prints on the glass. I was scared the whole time. But being scared didn't change the math. The oxygen was going to run out when it ran out. The temperature was going to drop at a specific rate. So she trailed off. You just solved the problem, Second finished. Yeah. They watched the stars together. After a while, Mira said, Second, yes. Thank you for coming for me. I know the math said I should be dead. Second's mandibles clicked softly. Humans have a saying about math and hope. What's that? Sometimes the equation is wrong. Way Station Carthage was a hub world, a vast orbital platform where a dozen species mingled in roughly equal population. When the luminous Endeavor docked, word had already spread. The impossible rescue. The human child who survived the unsurvivable. Fail 9 had requested privacy, but privacy was a luxury the galaxy didn't often grant. By the time they reached the medical wing, a crowd had formed. Valeth, Pletnai, Drell, even a few other humans, expatriates, and traders who'd heard one of their own needed help. Mira held Second's manipulator appendage, an odd sight that made several species do double takes. The child walked with a limp. Her arm was properly casted now, but her eyes were clear. A human woman pushed through the crowd. She wore the insignia of the collective medical corps. Mira Yamada, she said, and her voice cracked slightly. Mira nodded. The woman knelt. I'm Dr. Sarachen. I knew your mother. We trained together. For the first time since the rescue, something broke in Myra's expression. Not collapse, just recognition. Someone who knew, who understood. She talked about you, Mira said quietly. She said you were the best surgeon in the sector. She was better. Dr. Chin's eyes were wet. She was the best at everything. They stood like that for a moment. Then, Dr. Chun said, "Your mother saved my life once. During the Krishnai outbreak. She walked into a quarantine zone to extract me when everyone else said the risk was too high." She touched Myra's shoulder gently. "I want you to know, you come from someone extraordinary. And, from what I'm hearing, you are too." Myra didn't respond. Just turned her face into Dr. Chen's shoulder and, finally, let the tears come. Fail 9 watched from a distance as the human medical team surrounded the child. Grief counselors, trauma specialists, people trained to help younglings process the impossible. "She's in good hands now," Second said beside him. "Yes, but Fail 9 couldn't shake the feeling that they'd all just witnessed something that would ripple outward in ways they didn't yet understand. The memorial service happened 3 days later. Humans did death differently than Valith. More ceremony, more symbolism. They burned incense, read words, share memories. Dr. Keiko Yamada had been respected, loved, brilliant. The gathering was small, but intense with feeling. Mira stood at the front, wearing clothes that Dr. Chen had found for her. She'd insisted on speaking. "My mom used to say that space exploration was humanity's greatest act of faith," Mira began. Her voice was steady, strong, that every time we left Earth, we were betting that our intelligence, our adaptability, our refusal to give up would be enough. She looked at the crowd, humans and aliens alike. She taught me that being human meant solving problems. That we might not be the strongest or the fastest or the smartest species out here, but we're the ones who look at impossible situations and ask how, instead of why not. Myra's hands clenched. When the ship started failing, Mom didn't waste time being afraid. She showed me what to do, step by step, like it was just another puzzle. And then her voice wavered. She made sure I had a chance, even if it meant she didn't. Silence. I'm alive because my mom believed humans don't give up. And I'm not going to give up either. Mira lifted her chin. I'm going to finish what she started. I'm going to be the kind of person who walks into the dark and comes back with answers. The humans in the crowd were crying openly now, but the aliens, the Valith and Krishnai and Drell, they watched with something different. Something that looked like recognition. Understanding. After the service, Fail 9 approached Mira. "That was a remarkable speech," he said. "Mom wrote most of it," Mira admitted, in her log, just in case. She said I should tell people that humans are worth believing in. She was right. Fail 9's crest plates shifted in the pattern his species used for deep respect. "Mira, I want you to know, your survival wasn't luck. It was engineering, intelligence, will. The collective needs more of that." Mira looked up at him. "Do you think when I'm older, could I train to be a navigator? Like you?" Fail 9 felt something warm bloom in his thorax. "I think you could be anything you wanted. But yes, if you choose that path, I would be honored to recommend you." They stood together, watching the stars through the observation window. The same stars that had tried to kill Mira. The same stars she refused to fear. "Commander?" Mira said after a while. "Yes. When you found me, was it close? Like mathematically? You had perhaps 6 hours of oxygen remaining." Mira nodded. Mom's calculations were good then. She said someone would come within a week. How did she know? For the first time, Mira smiled. Really smiled. Because humans are terrible at leaving people behind. She said it was our best and worst quality. Fail 9's mandibles curved. "Your mother understood our species better than most humans. She understood everyone." Myra's voice was soft. "That's why they're going to remember her." In the days that followed, the story spread. Not through official channels, but through the networks that bound the collective together. The humans had a phrase for it. Going viral. The child who survived the unsurvivable. The human youngling who built life's support from wreckage and waited with the patience of a navigator for rescue. The girl who stood at her mother's memorial and promised to walk into the dark. In Krishnai trading posts, they told it as a tale of endurance. In Drell scientific communes, they analyzed her engineering solutions and added them to emergency protocols. In Valith fleet academies, instructors used her as an example of applied intelligence under duress. And in human communities scattered across a dozen worlds, parents told their children, "This is what we are. This is what we do. When everything fails, we improvise. When hope dies, we do the math. When the stars try to kill us, we survive anyway." Mira Yamada became a symbol. Not intentionally, not willingly, just by being what her mother had taught her to be. Human. But that was part one of a story that was far from over. Because 6 days alone in the dark had changed Mira in ways no one yet understood. And the galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous humans aren't the warriors or the diplomats. Sometimes they're the ones who've seen death's mathematics and decided to rewrite the equation. The ones who refuse to accept impossible as an answer. The ones who survive. 3 years passed like water through cupped hands. Mira grew. Not just taller, though she did that too, shooting up in the awkward way human adolescence did, but sharper, harder. The kind of hard that came from knowing exactly how many hours of oxygen you had left and building your survival plan around it. Dr. Sarah Chun took guardianship. It made sense on paper. She'd known Keiko, understood the work, had the clearances. But privately, Sarah suspected she was the one being taken care of. Mira had a way of organizing chaos that made career administrators look sloppy. The girl was 11 now. She studied xenobiology with the same focus her mother had. Aced engineering courses meant for academy cadets twice her age. And every night, she sat at her terminal reading incident reports from across the collective. Ship failures, colony disasters, exploration accidents. She was looking for patterns. "You're going to burn out," Sarah said one evening, finding Mira surrounded by holographic data streams at 2 in the morning. "Can't burn out if you pace yourself." Mira didn't look up from the casualty statistics scrolling past her eyes. Did you know that 63% of deep space fatalities are from preventable system cascades? Mira, if crews had better emergency protocols, real ones, not just a manual nobody reads, we could cut that to maybe 20%. Her fingers danced through the projections. "I've been modeling it." Look, Sarah looked. The mathematical elegance was frightening. This wasn't the work of an 11-year-old. This was the work of someone who'd watched people die and decided it wouldn't happen again. Not if she could help it. "You know you're allowed to just be a kid, right?" Sarah tried to keep her voice gentle. Mira finally turned. Her eyes, Keiko's eyes, held something ancient. "I was a kid. For 8 years. Then I spent 6 days doing math to stay alive." She gestured at the reports. "These people didn't have someone teaching them the math. I did. So I'm going to use it." Sarah had no argument for that. How did you tell someone who'd survived the unsurvivable that they should play with toys instead of preventing tragedies? You didn't. The message came on a Tuesday. Mira was in advanced orbital mechanics, the only human in a class of Valith cadets who found her presence both inspiring and vaguely unsettling. When her comm chimed with a priority flag. Professor Thale 9, yes, that Thale 9, who'd taken a teaching position specifically to mentor her, nodded permission. Mira stepped into the hall. The message was audio only. The voice made her stop breathing. "Mira Yamada. This is Captain Jorin Vex of the independent vessel Nomad's Conscience. I have information about your mother's final expedition. The Ashmar Expanse incident. If you want to know what really happened out there, meet me at Docking Bay 7, Carthage lower levels, midnight station time. Come alone." The message ended. Mira stood in the corridor, heart doing complicated things in her chest. Around her, students flowed past, Krishnai with their chittering language, Drell floating in their environmental spheres, Valith moving with that peculiar grace that came from having 6 limbs. None of them had just had their carefully constructed grief cracked open. She should tell Sarah. Should tell Thale 9. Should absolutely not go to a midnight meeting in the lower levels with a stranger who claimed to have answers about a tragedy 3 years cold. Mira checked the time. She had 11 hours to decide. She went. Of course she went. She was her mother's daughter, and Keiko Yamada had never met a mystery she didn't need to solve. The lower levels of Carthage Station were where things got unofficial. Not illegal exactly, just flexible. The kind of place where trade happened in currencies the collective didn't track, and questions weren't encouraged. Mira wore a hood. Probably unnecessary. There weren't many human children on Carthage, and none with a particular reputation, but it made her feel less exposed. Docking Bay 7 was small, private, the kind rich people rented when they didn't want records of their comings and goings. The ship docked, there was like nothing Mira had seen in any registry. Sleek where most vessels were utilitarian. Dark-hulled, almost predatory. The design language was wrong. Curves where there should be angles, organic flow where engineering usually demanded hard geometry. The airlock opened. A figure emerged. Myra's first thought was, human. Her second thought was, no, not quite. He was tall, broad-shouldered in a way that suggested either heavy gravity origins or extensive augmentation. Dark hair pulled back, eyes that caught the station lighting and reflected it wrong, too bright, too focused. He wore clothing that might have been formal once, but had been adapted for function. Pockets everywhere. Tools clipped his belt. A datapad in one hand. When he saw her, he smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Mira Yamada," he said. His voice matched the recording. "Thank you for coming. You said you had information." Mira kept her distance. The self-defense training Sarah had insisted on suddenly felt very relevant. "About my mother, Ido." He gestured to his ship. "But not out here. Too many sensors. Too many interested parties." Every instinct Mira had screamed. This was how abduction started. How children disappeared. How? "I'm not getting on your ship," she said flatly. Jorin Vex studied her with those two bright eyes. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. "Smart. Your mother would be proud." He tapped something on his datapad. "Alternative. There's a secure room in Base 7's admin section. Faraday shielded. Private. You can keep the door open if you want." That was reasonable. Suspiciously reasonable. "Why should I trust you?" Mira asked. "You shouldn't." Vex's smile was sharp. "I'm a stranger offering impossible information about a dead woman. Trust will be idiotic." He pulled something from his pocket. Tossed it. Mira caught it reflexively. A data chip. Old Earth design. Her mother's handwriting on the label. If you're reading this, I found something." Myra's hands started shaking. "That chip has been encrypted 6 ways," Vex said quietly. "Your mother's biometrics, locked to her DNA signature. Except she left a backdoor. Guess whose genetic markers it'll also accept?" Mira looked up. "What did you get this?" "From a Persephone's dream. From a hidden compartment in her quarters that the collective recovery team missed." Vex's expression was unreadable. "Your mother was investigating something in the Ashmar expanse. Something that wasn't in her official mission brief. Something that got her killed." The corridor felt too cold. Too bright. What was she investigating? Mira managed. "That," Vex said, "is why you need to hear the full story. And why we don't have much time." The secure room was exactly what he'd promised. Small. Shielded. Door propped open with Mira positioned where she could run if needed. Vex sat across from her. Between them, a hollow projector displayed the chip's contents. "Your mother contacted me 4 months before the Persephone's dream launched," Vex began. "She found something in the collective archives. A pattern. Ships that entered the Ashmar expanse didn't just fail. They failed in specific ways. Life support cascades. Navigation errors. Always the same sequence." Mira leaned forward despite herself. "Equipment failure. That's what the official report said. The official report is partially accurate." Vex pulled up data streams. "But equipment doesn't fail randomly. It fails because of stress, damage, or sabotage. Your mother suspected option 3. The word hung in the air like a weapon. Who would sabotage survey vessels? Mira said slowly. That's what she wanted to find out. Vex's fingers moved through the hollow display. She asked me to monitor collective communications during her mission, to watch for anomalies. And I found them. The projection changed. Showed encrypted transmissions. Routing paths that made no sense. Data packets that appeared to be standard navigational updates, but carried hidden payloads. Someone was tracking the Persephone's dream, Vex said. Someone with access to collective systems. They knew your mother was getting close to something they wanted hidden. Myra's mind raced. This was conspiracy theory territory. The kind of thing paranoid traders whispered about in station bars. Except her mother had died. And Vex had her personal data chip. And the math. The math was starting to add up in ways that made Myra's stomach hurt. What was she close to? Mira asked. Vex was quiet for a moment. Then he said, the Ashmar expanse isn't a natural phenomenon. It's a weapons test site. The words landed like stones. Someone, and I don't know who yet, but the evidence points to a collective research division. Someone has been testing spatial disruption technology, tearing holes in space-time to see what happens. Vex's expression was grim. The 17 expeditions that vanished? Not accidents. Test subjects. Mira felt something cold slide down her spine. That's insane. The collective doesn't. The collective is 17 species with competing interests, Vex interrupted. Most of them want peace. But some want advantage. And weapons research happens in the dark, where treaties don't see. He pulled up another file. This one was video. Keiko Yamada's face filled the projection. Mira made a sound she didn't recognize. 3 years since she'd seen her mother move, heard her voice. It hurt worse than the broken arm had. Mira, honey, if you're watching this, I'm probably dead. Keiko's recorded voice was steady. Professional. But her eyes held fear. I found the test logs. Coordinates. Schedules. They've been using the expanse for 18 years. And I think they know I know. On screen, Keiko looked directly at the camera. At her daughter across time. I'm taking the dream into the expanse one more time. I need to get physical evidence, something they can't delete or deny. If I don't come back, she swallowed hard. If I don't come back, find Captain Jorin Vex. He's complicated, but he's honest. He'll help you finish this. The recording ended. Mira sat in silence. Processing. Calculating. Why didn't you come forward? She finally said. 3 years ago. Why didn't you tell the collective what you knew? Vex's laugh was bitter. Because the people running these tests are inside the collective. I don't know which species, which division, but they're well placed enough to hide 17 expeditions worth of evidence. He met her eyes. If I come forward, I'd be dead. And you'd never have known the truth. So why now? Why tell me? Because you're not a child anymore. Vex leaned forward. Because you spent 3 years becoming exactly what your mother was. Someone who solves impossible problems. And because he hesitated. Because I owed Keiko. She saved my life once. Long time ago. Different story. I couldn't save hers. But maybe I can help you finish her work. Mira looked at the data chip in her hand. At the evidence floating in the hollow projection. At this stranger who'd appeared with answers that shattered everything she thought she knew. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. I want you to do what your mother couldn't, Vex said. I want you to expose this. But we need proof. Real, physical evidence from the expanse itself. And I need someone who understands the science. Someone who can interpret what we find. You want me to go back there? It wasn't a question. Yes. I am 11. You're a survivor. Vex's voice was gentle. You're the girl who rebuilt life, support from scraps, and waited 6 days for rescue. You're the daughter of the woman who died, trying to save future crews from dying the same way. And you're the only person I trust to see this through. Myra's hands clenched. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was insane, that she should go to Sarah, to Thale 9, to literally any responsible adult. But another part, the part that had done the math while oxygen ticked down, the part that had her mother's face and her mother's mind, that part was already calculating vectors. If I do this, she said slowly, if I agree to help you, I have conditions. Vex smiled. This time it reached his eyes. Name them. First, we bring backup. I don't care how paranoid you are about infiltration. I'm not going into the expanse with just you. Myra's voice was steel. I know someone we can trust, absolutely. A Valeth commander who rescued me once. He's teaching at the academy now. We bring him. Acceptable. Second, we do this smart. No hero runs. We collect evidence, we get out, we deliver it to multiple sources simultaneously so it can't be suppressed. She'd learned this from her mother's disaster protocols. Redundancy in everything. Also acceptable. Third, Mira met his eyes. You tell me everything. Who you really are. Why my mother trusted you. What you're not saying about all of this. Vex was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached up and pulled back his sleeve. His forearm was covered in scar tissue, the kind that came from catastrophic burns. But underneath the scars, Mira could see something else. Faint lines, geometric patterns, subcutaneous circuitry. I'm a hybrid, Vex said quietly. Human base, augmented with collective technology that's technically illegal. I was an explorer for the collective 15 years ago, until my ship got caught in an early expanse test. I was the only survivor, the only one who made it out before the spatial disruption collapsed. He rolled his sleeve back down. The technology that saved me also changed me, made me capable of interfacing directly with ship systems, made me sensitive to spatial anomalies. His voice was flat, factual. The collective classified me, said I was too valuable to risk and too dangerous to deploy. I declined to be a lab specimen. So I left, became independent, and I've been tracking these tests ever since. You want revenge, Mira said. I want accountability. Vex's eyes were bright again. Fierce. 17 expeditions. Hundreds of lives. Your mother. They don't get to keep doing this. Not while I'm alive to stop them. Mira understood. Oh, she understood completely. Grief and rage made you do math. Made you calculate how to prevent the thing that killed people you love from killing anyone else. Made you walk back into the dark. Okay, she said. I'm in. But we do it my way. Careful. Smart. And we don't die. Vex extended his hand. Deal. Mira shook it. His palm was warmer than it should be. The augmentation, probably. Thermal regulation improvements. When do we leave? She asked. Soon as you convince your Valeth commander. Vex stood. And Mira? Your mother would be proud of you. She'd be terrified, Mira corrected. But yeah, she'd understand. Telling Thale 9 was harder than expected. Mira found him in his office at the academy, reviewing student assessments. He looked up when she entered, mandibles clicking in welcome. Mira, I didn't expect to see you until tomorrow's lecture. I need to talk to you, she said, about something classified, something dangerous, and something that's going to sound completely insane. Thale 9 set down his datapad. His thermal pits focused on her with the intensity that meant he was reading her biorhythms, stress levels, honesty markers. I'm listening, he said carefully. So Mira told him. Everything. The message from Vex. Her mother's hidden investigation. The theory about weapons testing. The evidence. She half expected him to dismiss it. To call security. To be the responsible adult who stopped this before it started. Instead, Thale 9 sat very still. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Your mother came to me, he finally said, 4 months before her mission. She asked about anomalous ship failures in the expanse. I gave her what data I had access to. His crest plates shifted. I thought it was academic curiosity, but she was investigating. You believe me, Mira said. Not a question. I've seen the casualty reports. The patterns. Thale 9 is subsonic harmonics dropped. I've wondered. But wondering without proof is simply paranoia. If what you're saying is true, if someone has been testing weapons in violation of the treaty, then we need to prove it, Mira finished. Thale 9 looked at her. Really looked. At the girl he'd rescued from a dying ship 3 years ago. At the student who'd become the Academy's youngest advanced mathematics prodigy. At Keiko's daughter, who had her mother's determination and her mother's death to avenge. This is exceptionally dangerous, he said. I know. You could die. I've done that before. Didn't take. Thale 9's mandibles curved. Almost a smile. You're serious about this. Completely. Another long silence. Then, Thale 9 stood, his full height imposing even for a Valeth. Then, we do it properly. We gather a small team. Trusted individuals. We plan every contingency. And we don't tell the collective until we have evidence so overwhelming they can't ignore it. Relief flooded Myra's chest. You're coming with me. Did you think I wouldn't? Thale 9's voice was gentle. You're my student. More than that, your family. And your mother was right to investigate this. If her death can prevent others, then we honor her memory by finishing her work. Mira felt tears threaten. Push them back. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Fail 9 said. Thank me when we return alive. Now, tell me about this Captain Vex. The team assembled over the next week. Mira, Fail 9, Vex, and one more, Dr. Sarah Chun insisted on coming. You're not doing this without medical support, she'd said flatly. And I owe Keiko too. For people. One ship. One destination. The Nomad's conscience was even stranger on the inside than the outside. The architecture felt organic. Curved corridors, soft lighting, systems that seemed to anticipate need before it was voiced. Hybrid design, Vex explained as he showed them to quarters. Part collective standard, part other things I've acquired over the years. She's fast, shielded, and she can handle spatial distortion better than any registered vessel. Because you can feel the anomalies, Fail 9 said. Something like that. Vex didn't elaborate. They launched quietly. No flight plan. No registry update. Just slipped out of Carthage's traffic pattern and accelerated toward the expanse. Mira spent the journey reviewing her mother's data. The evidence was circumstantial, but compelling. Test schedules that aligned with lost expeditions. Encrypted communications. Energy signatures that matched theoretical spatial disruption weapons. But circumstantial wouldn't be enough. They needed physical proof. We're approaching the expanse, Vex called from the cockpit. Mira joined him, Sarah, and Fail 9 right behind. Through the viewport, space looked wrong. The stars didn't bend exactly, but they seemed uncertain. Like reality was holding its breath. I'm reading spatial instability, Fail 9 reported from sensors. Fluctuations in the dimensional membrane. This is consistent with artificial disruption. There, Vex pointed to a coordinate. That's where the Persephone's dream went down. And, according to your mother's logs, that's where the weapons platform should be. Should be. Mira loved how he said it. Like finding a secret weapons facility was just another task to check off. The conscience moved deeper into the expanse. The wrongness intensified. Mira felt it in her bones, a pressure that shouldn't exist, a sense that physics was negotiable here. Got something? Vex said. His hands moved across controls that looked like they'd been grown rather than built. Massive structure, heavily shielded. But it's there. The view screen adjusted. Enhanced. And suddenly Mira could see it. A station. Enormous. Hanging in space where no station should be. Its design was collective. She recognized Valeth engineering, Kreshni mathematics, Drell energy systems. But twisted. Weaponized. At its heart, something pulsed. A sphere of absolute darkness that hurt to look at. Spatial disruptor, Fail 9 whispered. His thermal pits flared in what might have been fear. By the ancestors. They actually built it. They've been testing it, Vex corrected grimly. Look at the debris field. Mira looked, saw the twisted metal, the shattered hulls, counted at least 11 distinct wreck signatures. 11 expeditions. Her mother's made 12. We need to get closer, Sarah said. Document everything. Get serial numbers, construction dates, anything that proves this is sanctioned. Closer means risk, Fail 9 warned. If they detect us, they won't. Vex's voice was confident. Too confident. Trust me. He guided the conscience forward. Mira watched sensors, expecting alarms. Defensive systems. Something. Nothing. The station's automated, Vex explained. Minimal crew. Probably rotates personnel to maintain secrecy. Right now it's in standby, which gives us maybe 30 minutes to gather data before the next test cycle. Test cycle, Mira said. Vex didn't answer, just pointed. At the edge of sensor range, another ship was approaching. Small, civilian registry. Probably a survey vessel or independent trader who'd wandered too close. Probably didn't know they were about to die. We have to warn them, Sarah said. Warning them broadcasts our position, Fail 9 said. And dooms our mission. Mira watched the approaching ship. Calculated trajectories. Probabilities. Survival odds. The math was cold. But her mother hadn't died, so Mira could let other people die just to gather evidence. Contact them, she said. Encrypted burst. Tell them to get out. Now. Vex looked at her. Something flickered in his two bright eyes. Then he nodded. Sending. The burst transmitted. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the distant ship's drives flared. It banked hard, fleeing back the way it came. And on the weapons platform, lights began to activate. They detected the transmission, Fel9 said. The station is powering up. Vex's hands flew across controls. Hold on. This is going to get interesting. The spatial disruptor began to spin. That sphere of darkness at the station's heart pulsed, growing, reaching. Reality screamed. That was the only way Mira could describe it. Space itself made a sound as it tore. The conscience shook, alarms wailing, systems straining. Get us out, Sarah shouted. Working on it. Vex augmentations glowed through his skin, patterns lighting up as he interfaced directly with the ship. The disruption field is expanding faster than projected. They must have upgraded. The ship lurched. Mira grabbed a console to stay upright. Through the viewport, she saw space fold in ways that violated geometry. The weapons platform was activating defense systems now, tracking their position. They know we're here, Fel9 said unnecessarily. Did we get the data? Mira demanded. Most of it, Fel9 confirmed. Serial numbers, energy signatures, construction records. It's enough. Then we run, Vex said. The conscience spun, drives screaming as they pushed to escape velocity. Behind them, the spatial disruptor reached its full power. Reality buckled. Tula. And something came through the tear. What is that? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Mira stared at the view screen, at the thing emerging from folded space. It looked like a ship, but wrong. Alien in ways that had nothing to do with species and everything to do with geometry that shouldn't exist in 3 dimensions. That's not possible, Fel9 said. That's not from our reality. Vex's face had gone pale. They're not just testing weapons. They're opening doors, finding out what's on the other side. The impossible ship oriented toward them began to move. Faster, Mira shouted. Whatever that thing is, we don't want to meet it. The conscience fled. The expanse churned behind them. And, in the distance, the weapons platform registered their departure, calculated threat levels, and made a decision. It fired. Not at them. At the impossible ship. The spatial disruptor lanced out. A beam of collapsed reality. It hit the intruder. And, for a moment, Mira saw something beautiful and terrible. A ship from another dimension dissolving into probability and light. Then, the conscience cleared the expanse boundary. Normal space resumed. The wrongness faded. They made it. Barely. Everyone okay? Vex called. Sounds of affirmation. Shaky. Relieved. What the hell was that last part? Sarah demanded. Vex was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I think the collective has been using the expanse to test weapons. But I also think they've been testing something else. And I think they've found it. Found what? Mira asked. The answer to whether we're alone in the multiverse. Vex's voice was grim. Turns out we're not. And the things on the other side? They're not friendly. Fel9 checked the data they'd gathered. We have what we came for. Evidence of illegal weapons testing. Proof that the collective has been lying about the expanse. And proof that they're playing with forces they don't understand, Sarah added. Mira looked at the data chip her mother had left her. At the evidence they'd nearly died to collect. At the truth that was going to shake the collective to its foundations. We exposed this, she said. All of it. The weapons. The tests. The deaths. And whatever they're trying to summon from the other side. Agreed, Fel9 said. Agreed, echoed Sarah. Vex just nodded. His augmentations were still glowing faintly. It's going to start a war. Maybe several. When this gets out, every species is going to accuse every other species. The paranoia alone could fracture the collective. Then, they shouldn't have been running secret weapons programs, Mira said flatly. My mother died trying to expose this. I'm not letting her death mean nothing. The conscience burned toward Carthage. Behind them, the expanse settled back into its deceptive quiet. But, in the deep dark, the weapons platform remained. Testing. Experimenting. Opening doors that should stay closed. And, on the other side of those doors, things that had noticed the knocking were beginning to push back. The truth was about to come out. And, the galaxy had no idea what was coming. They expected resistance. Threats. Maybe an accident that would ensure the evidence never reached public channels. What they got was silence. The nomad's conscience docked at Carthage without incident. No security blockade. No armed response. Just standard traffic control, guiding them to birth like they were hauling grain instead of proof of genocide. I don't like this, Vex said, hands hovering over weapons systems that shouldn't exist on a civilian vessel. Fail 9 agreed. His thermal pits were cycling rapidly, the Valith equivalent of checking over your shoulder. The data we transmitted should have triggered immediate response, either arrest or elimination. They'd been smart about it. Multicast transmission to 17 different recipients across 6 species. News agencies. Independent watchdogs. 3 different governments. Redundancy meant someone would act even if others were compromised. But the silence felt wrong. Like the moment before a ship's hull breached. Maybe they're scrambling, Sarah suggested. Trying to figure out damage control. Or maybe they're already controlling the damage, Mira said quietly. She'd been watching news feeds since they transmitted. 12 hours and counting. Nothing. Not a whisper. They're suppressing it. All of it. They can't suppress 17 sources, Fail 9 protested. Mira met his eyes. Wanna bet? The truth came from an unexpected place. They'd split up to gather intel. Mira and Sarah to the human quarter, Fail 9 to Valith administrative channels. Vex to his network of, as he called them, concerned independents who appreciated discretion. Mira was in the academy library when her datapad pinged. The message was from a student she barely knew, a Drell named Phosphine who specialized in information architecture. You're looking for why your transmission disappeared. Check attached file. Then, delete this message. Be careful. The file was a network map. It showed the 17 recipients of their evidence dump. And one by one, showed how each had been isolated, rerouted, or neutralized within minutes of receipt. News agencies had their servers crash. Coincidentally, all at once, government channels got flooded with false flag reports, drowning the signal in noise. Independent watchdogs received priority security updates that quarantined the data as corrupted. Someone had anticipated their move, had systems in place to catch this exact kind of leak. Mira felt cold. Then hot. Then something that wasn't quite anger and wasn't quite fear. She called an emergency meeting. They gathered in Vex's ship. The only place they were certain wasn't monitored. They have AI-assisted suppression, Phosphine explained. The Drell floated in their environmental sphere, bioluminescent patterns pulsing anxiously. Not true AI, that's still banned, but automated response networks sophisticated enough to detect, classify, and neutralize information threats in real time. How sophisticated? Fail 9 demanded. Collective level, sophisticated. Phosphine's patterns dimmed. This isn't one species acting alone. This is coordinated. Multi-government. Which means the weapons program has backing from the highest levels. Sarah made a sound like she'd been punched. They murdered hundreds of people. Keiko. All those expeditions. And the collective knew? Not the whole collective, Vex said carefully. A faction within it. Probably started small, one species black ops program. Then others found out and joined rather than being left behind. Standard arms race logic. Doesn't matter who started it, Mira said. Her voice was ice. What matters is we can't fight it through official channels. They control those. So what do we do? Sarah asked. Give up. No. Mira pulled up her own datapad. We do what my mother would do. We change the equation. She'd been thinking about this since Phosphine's message. About systems and networks and how information really spread. The official channels were compromised. Fine. There were unofficial ones. We don't transmit to governments, Mira said. We transmit to people. Directly. Bypass the filters. Make it too big to suppress. Fail 9's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. A distributed release. Peer-to-peer networks. Public forum. Exactly. Myra's fingers flew across her interface. We package the evidence as something shareable. Make it simple enough that anyone can understand, but detailed enough that experts can verify. Then, we seed it everywhere at once. They'll still try to suppress it, Vex warned. Let them try. Myra's smile was sharp. You can't suppress a million voices. And once people see what their governments have been hiding, they'll spread it themselves. Out of anger, out of fear, out of spite. Phosphine's patterns brightened. I can help with that. The Drell information networks span 100 worlds. If we inject the data there, it'll propagate faster than any suppression algorithm can track. I have contact in the Kreshnai trading guilds, Sarah added. They love gossip, especially scandalous gossip about collective corruption. Fail9 was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I know academy instructors across 6 species. If we can get this into educational networks, frame it as a case study in institutional failure. He trailed off. Yes, that could work. Vex just smiled. And I know every independent ship captain who's ever lost crew to equipment failure in that sector. They'll carry this message to every port in the galaxy. Mira felt something warm bloom in her chest. This was her mother's legacy. Not dying in the dark, but building a network of people who refuse to let truth stay buried. We do it tonight, she said. Simultaneous release across every channel we can access. Make them play whack-a-mole with 1,000 sources. And then? Sarah asked quietly. Then we wait, Mira said. And hope the galaxy cares. They called it the Expanse files. 17 gigabytes of evidence. Sensor logs. Construction records. The names and dates of 12 confirmed expeditions that had entered the Ashmar Expanse and never returned. Encrypted communications showing collective officials ordering tests. Energy signature analysis proving the spatial disruptor's existence. And at the center of it all, Keiko Yamada's personal log. Her voice. Her investigation. Her final words before entering the Expanse one last time. If you're hearing this, I'm probably dead. But my death means something if it prevents this from happening to others. The collective has been testing weapons in violation of the treaty. They've been sacrificing crews, people with families, with dreams, with futures, to advance military technology. This has to stop. This has to end. Please, make them answer for this. Mira listened to her mother's voice one more time before releasing the files. 3 years of grief compressed into 30 seconds of recorded plea. Then she pressed transmit. The Expanse files went live at midnight station time. Across Drell information networks. Through Kreshnai trading channels. Into Academy educational systems. Across independent ship networks. 1,000 seeds planted in fertile ground. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Then, like ice cracking on a frozen lake, the reactions began. A Kreshnai trader posted it to their guild's public forum with a caption, Collective killed my cousin's ship. Now we know why. A Valeth Academy student forwarded it with commentary. Proof that our governments lie. Share before they delete. A human survivor of a different spatial anomaly incident shared it. This is why they told us to forget. They knew. The shares multiplied. Hundreds became thousands. Thousands became hundreds of thousands. By dawn, the Expanse files were the most distributed piece of data in collective history. And the suppression systems, designed to handle targeted leaks, completely failed against a distributed swarm. The backlash was immediate and seismic. On Kreshnai homeworld, protesters shut down government facilities demanding answers. On Valeth Prime, the High Navigators faced emergency tribunal. Human colonies called for immediate withdrawal from joint military programs. The Collective Council, that august body that represented all 17 species in unity, went into emergency session. And Mira watched it all from Carthage, feeling simultaneously vindicated and terrified. They're denying it, Sarah said, monitoring official responses, calling the files fabricated, propaganda from anti-collective extremists. Of course they are. Vex said. Admitting truth means admitting guilt. But the evidence, Fail9 started. Doesn't matter. Vex's voice was bitter. Not to people in power. They'll fight this until they can't anymore. And even then, they'll try to make it about rogue elements and isolated incidents. Mira knew he was right. Had known it from the start. Truth wasn't a magic bullet. It was a tool. And tools required leverage. We need more than evidence, she said slowly. We need a face. Someone sympathetic. Someone they can't dismiss as extremist or fabricator. Everyone looked at her. No, Sarah said immediately. Absolutely not. It has to be me, Mira said. I'm the survivor. The girl who lived through what they caused. The daughter of the woman who died exposing their crime. She met Sarah's eyes. I'm a story they can't suppress. Fail 9 as thermal pits flared. You're 11 years old. The moment you step into public view, you become a target. I've been a target since I survived the Persephone's dream, Mira countered. At least this way, I'm a target doing damage. Vex said nothing, just watched her with those augmented eyes that had seen too much. If I do this, Mira continued, if I go public, really public, not just data dumps, but testimony, interviews, everything, they can't hide behind denials anymore. They'd have to either admit it or accuse a child of lying about her mother's death. They'll try option 2, Phosphine said quietly. Humans will be surprised how low governments will go. Let them try, Mira said. I have evidence. I have witnesses. And I have something they don't. What's that? Sarah asked. Myra's smile was sharp. I'm good on camera. The interview request came from Galactic News Network, the only truly multi-species media outlet that wasn't overtly controlled by any single government. Their offer was simple. Live broadcast, no editing, full hour of testimony. Risky, terrifying, perfect. I'll be right there with you, Sarah promised as they prepped. They try anything we walk. Mira nodded. She was wearing clothes Sarah had chosen, simple, dignified, the kind that made you look honest rather than theatrical. Her hair was pulled back. No muck-up. Just an 11-year-old girl with her mother's eyes. The studio was intimidating. Lights. Cameras. The host, a Drell named Current in Darkness who'd broken major stories before, floated in their sphere, patterns neutral and professional. We'll start with your story, Current said. The rescue. Then, we'll move to your mother's investigation. And, finally, the Expanse files. You can stop at any time. I won't stop, Mira said. The broadcast went live to 17 worlds. I'm Current in Darkness, and tonight I'm speaking with Mira Yamada, the 11-year-old survivor of the Persephone's dream disaster and daughter of Dr. Keiko Yamada, whose investigation into collective weapons testing has shaken the galaxy. Current's patterns shifted to warm concern. Mira, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, Mira said. Let's start with the rescue. 3 years ago, you survived 6 days alone on a dying ship. Tell us what happened. Mira told it. Simply, clearly, the reactor leak, her mother's sacrifice, the improvised life support, the math that kept her alive. Across 17 worlds, people watched a child explain survival engineering with the calm of a scientist discussing experiments. And you were 8 years old when this happened, Current said softly. Yes, most children that age would have panicked. My mother taught me not to panic. Myra's voice was steady. She said fear is just information. Use it to solve the problem. The interview moved to Keiko's investigation. Mira explained how her mother had discovered the pattern. The lost expeditions, the suspicious failures, the encrypted communications. Did your mother believe the collective was responsible? Current asked. She believed someone within the collective was responsible, Mira corrected. She didn't know who. That's why she went to the Expanse. To get proof. And she died there. Yes. Myra's hands clenched. She died because someone didn't want her finding that proof. Because they'd rather sacrifice one more crew than admit what they've been doing. The collective has called the Expanse files fabricated, Current said carefully. How do you respond? Mira looked directly at the camera. At the millions watching. At the governments scrambling to suppress what couldn't be suppressed. I respond with evidence, she said. Serial numbers that match manufacturing records. Energy signatures that correspond to theoretical weapons profiles. Communications with timestamps and encryption keys. And, most importantly, she pulled out the data chip. Her mother's chip. My mother's personal log. Her voice. Her investigation. Her final message. Current's patterns flickered with something like awe. May we hear it? Mira nodded. Keiko Yamada's voice filled the broadcast. Clear. Determined. Afraid, but refusing to let fear win. When it ended, the studio was silent. Your mother was very brave, Current said finally. My mother was a scientist, Mira corrected. She saw a problem. She solved it. The fact that it killed her doesn't make her brave. It makes the people who caused her death cowards. The words landed like hammers. What do you want people to know? Current asked. What's the message you want to leave with our audience? Mira took a breath. This was it. The moment she'd been building to. I want people to know that the collective has been lying, she said. Not about everything, but about this. They've been testing weapons in violation of the treaty. They've been sacrificing crews to advance military technology. And when my mother tried to expose it, they killed her. She leaned forward. But here's what they didn't count on. I'm my mother's daughter. I don't give up. I don't forget. And I will make sure that every single person responsible for this answers for what they've done. Her voice was steel. You can call the evidence fake. You can accuse me of lying. But you can't erase 12 expeditions. You can't bring back hundreds of dead crew members. And you can't silence the truth forever. Mira looked at the camera, at the galaxy watching. My name is Mira Yamada. My mother was Dr. Keiko Yamada, and she died trying to save lives. I'm asking everyone watching, don't let her death mean nothing. Demand answers. Demand accountability. Demand that the people we trust to lead us stop treating our lives as acceptable losses. She stood. And to whoever ordered those tests, whoever authorized those deaths, whoever thought they could hide behind classifications and denial, her smile was cold. I survived 6 days in the dark doing math. I will spend the rest of my life solving the equation of your downfall. That's not a threat. It's a promise. The broadcast ended. The galaxy erupted. Within hours, protests spread across every collective world. Governments fell. Officials resigned. Emergency councils convened. The Kreshnai were first. Their war council issued a statement condemning the weapons program and demanding full disclosure. The Valith followed, with High Navigator Thale 9's own cousin leading the call for transparency. Even species that had likely been involved started distancing themselves, blaming rogue elements, promising investigations. And through all, one phrase kept appearing in speeches, in protests, in demands for justice. Don't let her death mean nothing. Myra's words, her mother's legacy, turned into a rallying cry. The collective council met in emergency session for 6 straight days. The proceedings were public, something unprecedented. And slowly, painfully, the truth emerged. Yes, there had been weapons testing. Yes, it had been authorized at the highest levels. Yes, crews had died. Expeditions had been sacrificed. Evidence had been suppressed. The justification was always the same: security, defense, preparation for threats unknown. But the math didn't lie. Hundreds of people had died so governments could play with weapons they barely understood. Arrests began. High-ranking officials, military contractors, scientists who'd built the disruptor knowing what it would be used for. The Ashmar expanse was quarantined absolutely. The weapons platform was scheduled for demolition. And Dr. Keiko Yamada was formally honored by the Collective Council, posthumously declared a hero of truth. Her sacrifice acknowledged. Her investigation vindicated. Mira attended the ceremony, stood on the grand stage while representatives from 17 species offered condolences and platitudes and promises that this would never happen again. She didn't believe most of them, but she stood there anyway, representing her mother, representing every crew member who died for someone else's secrets. When they asked her to speak, she kept it brief. My mother didn't want to be a hero, Mira said. She wanted to be a scientist. She wanted to explore, to discover, to push boundaries in ways that help people, not hurt them. She looked at the assembled leaders. You've made promises today about transparency, about accountability, about never allowing this to happen again. Her voice was quiet, deadly serious. I'll be watching. For the rest of my life, I'll be watching. And if you break those promises, if you think enough time has passed that we've forgotten, I will be here to remind you. She touched the memorial plaque bearing her mother's name. We're humans. We don't give up. We don't forget. And we solve impossible problems. A pause. Consider this your impossible problem. Be better. Actually be better. Because my mother's daughter is still alive, still doing math, and still very, very motivated to make sure her death meant something. Mira walked off the stage. Behind her, the assembled dignitaries sat in uncomfortable silence. 6 months later, Mira stood in a different place. The Collective Academy. Advanced Xenotechnology Studies Program. She'd applied. Been accepted. Would start when she turned 12 in 3 weeks. Fail 9 would be one of her instructors. Sarah was taking a position at the Academy Medical Center. Even Phosphine was enrolling, the first Drell in the tactical engineering track. Vex had disappeared again, back to his independent routes. But he left a message. Your mother would be proud. So, stay dangerous, kid. Mira smiled at that. Dangerous? Yeah, she could work with dangerous. She stood in the memorial garden, a new installation dedicated to lost explorers. Her mother's name was there, carved in stone alongside hundreds of others. I did it, Mira said quietly. The equation balanced. The truth came out. The bastards are facing consequences. The wind moved through the memorial garden, carried the sound of students laughing somewhere distant, carried the hum of a station full of life and hope and futures that almost weren't. I know you tell me this is just the beginning, Mira continued, that there's more work to do, more problems to solve, more darkness to push back. She touched her mother's name on the memorial. Good thing I'm good at math. Above the station, the stars burned cold and bright. The same stars that had tried to kill an 8-year-old girl. The same stars that girl had refused to fear. Mira looked up at them, at the infinite dark, at all the impossible distances waiting to be crossed. Somewhere out there, the Ashmar expanse still churned. The weapons platform was being dismantled, but the tears in reality remained. The doors that had been opened didn't close just because humans stopped knocking. And on the other side of those doors, things that had noticed the intrusion were still watching, still waiting. But that was a problem for future Mira. Present Mira had a different equation to solve. How to be 11 years old, orphaned, carrying grief like a second skeleton, and still find reasons to smile. She looked around the memorial garden, saw Sarah approaching with 2 mugs of hot chocolate, saw Thale 9 reviewing course materials on a bench, saw Phosphine's sphere drifting over, bioluminescent patterns spelling out a cheerful greeting. Family, not the one she'd been born with, but the one she'd built from wreckage and trust and shared purpose. That was the equation's answer, she realized. You don't stop missing the people you lost. The grief doesn't solve. It transforms, becomes something you carry not because it's light, but because refusing to carry it would mean forgetting what mattered. Her mother had died, making sure Mira would live. And Mira would live, making sure her mother's death changed things. Made the galaxy slightly less willing to treat lives as expendable. Made people ask harder questions, demand better answers. That was the inheritance. Not trauma, not fear. Purpose. You coming? Sarah called. Your hot chocolate's getting cold. Mira took one last look at her mother's name. At the stars beyond. At the future waiting to be calculated. Yeah, she said. I'm coming. She walked toward her found family. Toward the academy, where she'd learned to turn grief into expertise. Toward the rest of her life, which would be spent solving impossible problems and refusing to accept that anything was truly beyond human capability. Because she was Mira Yamada, daughter of Keiko, survivor of the dark. And the galaxy was still learning what that meant. Behind her, the memorial stone caught the station's light, reflected it across thousands of names. People who'd gone into the unknown and never returned. But their deaths hadn't meant nothing. Not anymore. Because one girl had survived, had told their story, had made the galaxy listen, and in doing so, had proven the most fundamental truth about humanity. We don't stay lost. We find our way back. We bring the truth with us. And we make damn sure it changes everything. The stranger who appeared in the memorial garden wasn't human. Wasn't Valith or Kreshnai or Drell or any of the 17 species that made up the collective. It was something else. Something that folded space around itself like a cloak. Something that shouldn't be able to exist in three-dimensional reality, but did anyway. Mira, 14 now, taller, sharper, every inch her mother's daughter, stood before it without fear. "I know what you are," she said calmly. "You're from the other side. The things they were trying to contact with their weapons." The entity made no sound, but Mira felt its acknowledgement anyway. A pressure in her mind that might have been communication or might have been something else entirely. "The tests have stopped," Mira continued. "The weapons platform is gone. The collective has promised to leave your dimension alone." The entity's presence pulsed. Questioning. "Do I believe them?" Mira smiled coldly. "No. Governments lie. People forget. Eventually, someone will think they're smart enough to try again." Another pulse. This one felt like curiosity, "which is why I'm here," Mira said. "I'm developing early warning systems. Ways to detect dimensional breaches before they become catastrophic. I'm going to make sure that if anyone tries to open doors to your reality again, we know about it." She met what might have been the entity's eyes. "I'm not asking for your help. I'm telling you that humans keep their promises. My mother promised to expose the truth. I promised to make sure it mattered. And now I'm promising that we'll protect both our universes from idiots playing with forces they don't understand." The entity was still for a long moment. Then it laughed. The sound was like stars colliding, like reality giggling at itself. And it was gone. Mira stood alone in the memorial garden, feeling strange, feeling like she'd just negotiated with something that existed in more dimensions than she could perceive, feeling like her mother would have done exactly the same thing. "You keep finding impossible problems," Thale9's voice said behind her. He'd been watching, had probably called security the moment the entity appeared. "Someone has to solve them," Mira said. "True." Thale9's mandibles curved. "Your mother would be proud. My mother would tell me I'm being reckless and should let the experts handle interdimensional diplomacy." Also true. They stood together, looking at Keiko's name on the memorial. "But she'd do it anyway," Mira said softly. "Because someone has to. Because problems don't solve themselves. Because humans," she smiled. "Because humans don't give up." "No," Thale9 agreed. "You don't." Above them, the stars burned. Between the stars, the dark waited. And in that dark, impossible things watched a 14-year-old girl who'd survived the unsurvivable and decided she was worth keeping alive. Worth listening to. Worth remembering. Because humanity had proven something in the ashes of tragedy. They didn't stay victims. They became solutions. They were the species that looked at impossible situations and asked how, instead of why not. They were the ones who walked into the dark and came back with answers.